Hi, my name is Shonna Brown, and I am the host of Talk with Shonna. I'm a singer, songwriter, recording artist, currently living in Brampton, Ontario, originally from Wolfville, Nova Scotia. The theme song to my show is actually my original song called Turn Up the Microphone. Thanks everybody for watching, and here's the show. Hello, everyone. I am very pleased to have one of my good friends on the show for a second time today. She's a registered social worker, a trained trauma therapist with over 15 years of providing counseling and support services for clients that have survived traumatic situations in their life. Her name is Suchira Banerjee. Welcome to the show, Suchira. How are you?
I am very well, Shauna. Thank you so much for inviting me back. I'm really, really happy to be here with you today.
Amazing. Now, we had a really good first episode,
Mhm.
you and I, and we talked about a lot of things.
Yep.
Now, our last episode, we discussed women's self-care and
Mhm.
how it's very much individualized. Having a healthy and respectful relationship, a supportive relationship, is very important in our own self-care as women, right?
Absolutely.
And we touched on characteristics of unhealthy relationships, which included things like love bombing,
Mhm.
gaslighting, projections, humiliation, etc. Here's a clip of my previous episode with Suchira Banerjee.
Going out of a toxic relationship is never an easy task. But I think the
Right.
first starting point that I do want to leave your audience with is to
Yes.
start tuning into your own bodies. We are talking about women's self care today. A very critical factor in the self care aspect is to take 5 to 10 minutes every day when you have the moment, when you have the space in your day, to just sit down somewhere quiet, ground your feet firmly on the ground, because the ground never leaves you. Your Whether it's your, whether you love to sit on the floor or you like to lie down, ground yourself. Feel the floor, the bed, the seat that you're sitting in. Feel it on your body, like feel the touch of it on your body. Focus on your breathing. Tell yourself that you're safe. Tell yourself that you're enough. That, I think, is the first starting point. Recognizing how your body is responding to different people and different situations. There is a beautiful book, Shauna, which I would recommend that you share with your audience. It's called as Body Keeps a Score. And the author is Bessel van der Kolk, very well-known trauma therapist. He's worked years with a different group of clients, and he's written this book, which is amazing if people want to read it. But it exactly says what we are talking about here. That those chronic headaches, chronic neck pains, your shoulders going up like this when you're around people, your back pain, your IBS, it has an emotional reason. And the first step towards taking care of yourself is to recognize that my body is a mirror of what I'm feeling. My body is a
Absolutely.
mirror of where I am. My body is a mirror of how safe I am. So, with your partner, if it is giving you signals, time to be curious. Are there red flags that I need to notice? Why am I feeling so agitated around this person? Why is it that my breathing gets shallow every time I'm around my partner? Every
Right.
time he broaches a topic or I broach a topic on finances, why is it that the next thing I know, I get this nasty headache?
Right.
Your body
Yes.
always keeps a score. So I
Absolutely.
would
I
want to
can.
leave your audience with this thought that self care, you make your choice, you know what works best for you. But at the same time, the first step is start tuning into your body. Start tuning into how you feel in separate circumstances in your life.
Yes. Well, I can tell you from personal experience when I was in my unhealthy relationship, I had my arms were up like this, and I'm talking all the time. And it took me a long time after getting out of it for them to come back down. And I didn't even really notice when I was in it. And that must have been my way of sort of compartmentalizing it, storing it somewhere else. And so that's speaking from my personal experience. That's what happened to me. And so even if you're not acknowledging it in your brain, your body is telling you, it's telling
Yeah.
you something's wrong here. This isn't good. Right. So
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. And I actually recommend everybody here watching right now to go check out this book, read it. I think it'll be a great read. I want to go read it myself too. I think it'd be really
That
informative.
toxicity and unhealthy relationships can be on a continuum. There could be
Mm,
some that you can work out, there could be some
mm,
that are beyond repair. But I think the first step for anybody who's recognizing red flags in their relationship is to
mm.
acknowledge that there is a red flag and it has
Yes.
nothing to do with me. But
Mm,
I am in this unhealthy setup, it is not serving me well. So the next step is to decide, what do I do now? Do I
yes.
continue staying in it? If I have to continue because of practical and emotional reasons, then the next thing is, as I said, the first thing, recognizing how your body is responding, doing
Yes.
some mindfulness, grounding, breathing every day. The second thing I would recommend is looking for your support people. All of
Mm,
us have a community. And you
yes.
will know when you find your community. And again, going back to my earlier point, your body will tell you when you have your community, because your
Yes.
body will relax completely, and you'll feel that. You'll see your shoulders dropping. You'll feel that you're laughing pretty, without any hesitation. Your smile
Mm,
is without any hesitation when you're around people, your community. And when I say your
yes.
community, I don't mean in a cultural or ethnic manner. I mean more in
Right.
terms of people who wouldn't judge you for who you are, people who
Yes.
wouldn't victim shame you. For me,
Hmm.
in so many years, I would say the community that I practice yoga with on a regular basis, that is one of the communities that I have recognized in my life as my safe space. Because every time I go there physically into the studio, I feel as if I've come home. I'm at peace with myself. I'm at peace with
Mm,
wherever I am. So I think the first step, as I said, recognizing your body, recognizing your triggers, identifying your support people. If you have to be in that relationship, always recognizing that any form of violence is not okay. And if you
right.
see the violence escalating, you need to seek help. And help
Yes.
doesn't need to be in form of you calling the police always. It could just mean talking to a therapist. There are plenty of community resources out there that are available for counseling, which are free of cost.
And now I'll bring you back to our current episode. Now, there's one topic that we touched on, and that was the trauma bond.
Mhm.
Now, we hear this around a lot, and I'm wondering if you could explain that to us. What is a trauma bond exactly?
Mhm. So I'm going to try, probably explaining it as simply as possible because, as you said, this jargon or this word is being used quite casually nowadays, right?
It is, yes.
In simple terms, a trauma bond is a relationship between the person and an abusive partner. Now, that partner could be an intimate partner, it could be
Right.
sometimes a friend, it could be even a parent, actually, for that matter. And often a trauma bond, as the name suggests, because there is chronic abuse in that relationship. And that abuse is often coupled with good times, and then the abuse comes, and then again there is good times. Like it's like a roller coaster, often that kind of a relationship where you have this really, really good attachment with the person is paying attention to you, loving you, showering you with gifts and appreciation, and suddenly starts finding faults with things which previously they used to appreciate. And you start doubting yourself and you're like, okay, did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? And they actually make sure that you do feel that you said something wrong or you did something wrong. And if you could have done it differently, they would have continued loving you in that format. So, to simplify this, what it means is you, as the victim or the survivor, starts actually rationalizing and starts somewhere normalizing that behavior of the abuser. And that's a trauma bond. Often you might have heard this term Stockholm syndrome,
Right.
where people who have lived in captivity for many years actually start seeing reason in why their abusers kept them captive. Oh, he had a very difficult childhood, or she actually had these problems because of which she did this. She was just angry because, or he was just angry because I did something to make them angry. So you don't really see the problem with the behavior, but you start justifying it. And the side effect of that justification is you start finding ways to fix yourself or fix the situation when actually the situation or the person is not really in your control. You're a part of that situation. You're not the one who's completely controlling it, right? So that's a trauma bond, a relationship between the victim and the abuser. And like I said, where the victim or the survivor starts justifying the behavior of the abuser as that's normal. It was justified for him or her to do it.
Right. Yes. And so that ends up bringing you back in when you're the victim, right? Because you're waiting for that next high of when that person's going to love bomb you and treat you, put you on a pedestal. And that's how you can get caught up in that whirlwind, right, of emotions.
Yeah.
Now, quite often an unhealthy relationship can consist of a narcissist and an empath. Now, can you explain to the viewers what exactly a narcissist is?
So, the term narcissism, again, just like trauma bonding, is quite commonly used nowadays,
It is.
right? So, I do want to tell the viewers that there could be toxic people in your life who have narcissistic tendencies, and
Yes.
there could be people who actually have a diagnosis of a narcissistic personality disorder. And there's a bit of a difference there. Because a person who's toxic and has narcissistic tendencies often, are dangerous. They are not really healthy people in your life. However, sometimes with the right help, if they are open to listening to you, if they are open to correcting themselves, there is a certain amount of empathy in people like that. And sometimes it might work that they understand it and they fix themselves, or they get help for themselves. But when you're talking about somebody who has, say, narcissistic personality disorder, that talks about actually a psychological condition, and that does not develop in a day, and that often has a lot of history behind it. But whether it's a person who has the tendency or whether it's somebody who has the disorder, in both cases, a narcissist is someone, as the name suggests, someone who has this sense of grandiose about themselves, a sense of unreasonable entitlement, which is actually often coupled by complete lack of empathy for the other person in the relationship. Everything is about themselves.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. We probably walk into, a party or a social event, and somebody behaves in a certain way with this individual. They're not going to see if, they did something in that situation to trigger that behavior. It's all about, oh, why did they behave like this with me? Or why was I treated like this like this? Right?
Yes.
So it's all about them. There is no empathy, no reciprocity for the other person in that relationship. Narcissists often also use a lot of toxic behaviors to control the victim, control the partner, control the other person in that relationship. And we can talk a little bit about what that control, what that power cycle can look like.
Yes.
But if I have to make it very simple, a narcissist often is someone who doesn't have the capacity to feel empathy. And we can go into detail about why that's the case. There's a lot of medical research, there's a lot of research showing why people develop those kind of tendencies, or why would they be diagnosed with that kind of a disorder. But bottom line is that they can't feel the empathy for the other person.
Right.
So all they are using this person for is a supply. This person is a supply for their emotions, their status. The way you dress up is what decides how I look like in a social circle.
Right.
The way you behave will make me look in a certain way in circle of friends. So it's all about me, nothing about you. You're not existent in that relationship at all, actually.
Very true. Very, very true. Now, an empath, on the other hand, is different than that, right? An empath.
Yeah.
So how would you characterize an empath?
So it's the complete opposite of the continuum, actually. So an empath is someone who has a heightened self and perception of other people's emotions,
Right.
which is a beautiful thing
Yes.
if there is reciprocity. So say, for example, I see you, I know you, Shonna, for so many years now.
Yes.
I see you at some point and you're looking really upset. As an empath, you don't have to really tell me anything.
Right.
Just by looking at your body language, often I would be like, oh my God, is she going through a hard time? Is that something that I can help her with? And I will lean into it. But the other person, if they are reciprocal, they would probably take the time to talk about what's happening or give a context. Empaths are people like that who automatically get drawn to people in need. they automatically get drawn to helping others. They automatically get drawn to, they have a heightened perception of other people's emotions through their reactions, nonverbal cues, all of that. But this unfortunate flip side of it is that they often actually are not able to set boundaries very clearly around themselves because they are so involved in taking care of the other person. So you asked me, who is an empath? And I think the biggest quality of an empath is heightened sense of perception, heightened sense of perception about other people's feelings, their emotions. Are they feeling bad? Are they feeling bad because I did something? Do I need to do something to fix it? So it's kind of a double whammy here because you're really, really perceptive and you're looking at other people constantly and trying to figure out how they are doing. But at the same time, often you're personalizing things as an empath.
Yes.
You're almost taking it on, thinking that maybe I did something or maybe I could have done something differently to make this person feel better. There is that huge sense of responsibility, unreasonable responsibility sometimes that empaths take on, because of which they also don't have very clear boundaries around themselves.
Yes.
So they'll go out of their way sometimes to help other people. They will go out of their way to take care of others. They're not going to pay attention to their own needs sometimes, just so that they can make the other person happy. And I think majority of women across the world, I would say, fit in that category.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think it doesn't matter what country, what community, what culture you're coming from. I think the way women are socialized culturally, I think focuses so much on you need to lean into other people's needs. Your existence, your purpose often is you have to fulfill a role as a mother, as a wife, as a sister, as a daughter.
Yes.
Right?
Don't you find that women are thought of as having to be more forgiving than when it comes to having affairs and cheating and different things like that? I find women feel like they're supposed to let those things slide more so than a man, right?
Yeah.
The majority.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from how we've been conditioned as a society, right? And to be the ones to be more forgiving and to be the ones to fix things and to be the ones to do that. And so, of course, that's what we're going to do because that's how we've been conditioned, right?
Absolutely. And honestly, to your point, we have seen this generation after generation, right?
Yes.
Because one is the conditioning you're talking about, but one is also what you're seeing around in your environment, actually. So if I have to tell you, like, I remember that when I was pretty young at that time, and not really young, I was a teenager. And I remember, sometimes my father would use humor. He would make jokes like, it's great you're studying, but you have to also learn how to cook because that's kind of your primary role when you grow up and get married. Getting married was the ultimate goal. Studying wasn't. Also, when I got married, I remember the elders in my family, especially the women in my family, telling me how, making sure that your relationships in your in-laws home is managed well is your responsibility. Whereas if culturally in Indian families, it's the woman who goes to her husband's house. And I think that's the culture across the world. Hardly have we ever seen men come into their wives' homes and live there.
Right.
Always that the wife or the woman has to go into, she has to change her last name. She has to take on the responsibility of building those new relationships without realizing that she's leaving her own family behind.
Right.
And what's the message that's given? It's in your hands how well this marriage is going to work.
Right. And she's the one compromising all of those things, right?
Constantly.
So it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that we touched on briefly the last episode, which we had a great time talking last time, and I'm happy to have you back. What is the narcissistic abuse cycle? Now, is that pretty much the same as the trauma bond, or is that a little bit different?
So I think the trauma bond is something that gets formed because of those steps in the abusive cycle. So we could talk a little bit about the steps. And I'm always careful that when we say that there's a cycle, when we say there are steps in a cycle, it's not a linear journey. It's not that, you finish this step and then you move on to the next.
Right.
It's a cycle. It's a circle, actually. So it's sometimes months, years of being in that circle and being trapped in that cycle of abuse, which causes the trauma bond.
Yes.
Because when you say a narcissist, one of the biggest control techniques a narcissist would use in a relationship is brainwashing.
Yes.
Actually making sure right at the get go of the relationship that they are brainwashing their victims to believe that their behavior, their feelings, everything is dependent on that victim, dependent on that person. So to give you, and so let's talk about the cycle because that might make sense.
Yeah.
So the
Please do.
first stage of a narcissistic abusive cycle is always the honeymoon phase,
Yes.
or the love bombing phase, as sometimes it's called, or it's also sometimes called as the idealization phase.
Right.
Now, this is a phase which is, I think, as the name suggests, it's the honeymoon phase. You're showered with gifts, you're showered with appreciation, you're seen as a strong individual in that relationship. Everything that, everything about you. So I'll give you an actual example from my own life. Like when I started dating my ex husband, the first few years of our relationship, I was showered by gifts that were like I was given, things in gold. I was given clothes. I was taken to these fancy restaurants. It was all about you.
Yeah.
You're the central point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
However, while you're love bombing me, there were also these hints about, what, you probably should think about reducing your weight a little bit so that you could fit into those lovely clothes that we saw that day.
Right.
Or you should probably, relax a little bit and start tolerating jokes when we are with friends, which are not really okay.
Right.
Right?
Like jokes perhaps at your expense, right?
Yes, at your expense,
Or
at
to humiliate you or
absolutely,
embarrass you, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the idealization phase is not something where you're, just being love bombed. That idealization phase often also has these little daggers in between,
Right.
daggers to say, which we don't really see as red flags, which because we are so overwhelmed by that love.
Yes,
The
exactly.
love is taking the central attention in that phase.
Right.
But if you pay closer attention, you're going to see signs and red flags right there and then. And again, like I had said the last time, Shonna, often those signs will not come here. They will not come at an intellectual level, but
Yeah.
you will feel it at the level of your body.
Yes, your
You,
body absorbs it. Like we talked about that book, The Body Keeps Score, on our last
yes,
episode.
yes,
And that's true. It does. You keep it in your body, and that keeps the score, which is so
absolutely.
true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, moving from the idealization phase, often in a lot of narcissistic relationships, you're going to move towards something called as the devaluation phase. So
Right.
the devaluation phase is somewhere where now this narcissistic individual in the relationship is identifying problems with you.
Right.
Everything that they had appreciated about you in the previous phase, about you being this strong woman, you speak up for yourself, you're so eloquent, you're so assertive, becomes a problem now.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Oh my God, you're always getting into fights with other people. Oh my God, how could you speak to my family like this?
Right.
Right? Or how could you behave with my friend? He was just making a joke. Can't you even take jokes? Right? So there is a lot of gaslighting in that phase.
Right. Yes. Yes.
You're constantly second guessing because this beautiful, charming individual who was loving you, you were the center of their attention, suddenly is now finding faults with you, is
Yes.
actually gaslighting your thinking, and it's making you think, okay, maybe I was a little aggressive more than I should have been.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Even if you were very justified in being assertive in that situation, but you're now second guessing yourself because he did not say that the last time, but now he's saying it. So maybe he's right. Maybe I need to taper it down a little bit.
Right. And it's
Also,
breaking you down, right? Breaking down your confidence levels.
absolutely, absolutely. The other thing that happens in this phase is a lot of projection. It's all your fault. I got angry because you behaved in this way.
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
Like I had things, I remember, in my own relationship, a lot of projection actually about how this relationship is not working because you're such a possessive, aggressive person, without realizing that, okay, why am I being possessive or aggressive? Or is that really possessiveness or aggressiveness? Or is it insecurity because you're constantly going out and probably having affairs?
Right. I'm just reacting to what you're doing.
I'm just reacting to what you're doing. You're presenting the context, my emotions and my body is responding to it. And then you are actually making me question my own reaction. You're making me question my own trust on myself.
Right.
So a
Yeah.
lot of projection,
Right.
a lot of, and I'm trying to think of the word that is used, but a lot of silence comes in this phase. So
Right.
you're excluded from activities that you were included before. You're put down in front of other people. You're ignored,
Right. Like
right?
silent treatment kind of thing.
Silent
Right? Like, oh,
treatment.
I'm not going to talk to you now for a week because you
Yes.
didn't agree with what I did or something.
Yes.
And
Being
that's
passive aggressive,
yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Right.
you deserve it. You actually spoke like that, so I have decided not to talk to you or not
Right.
to respond.
Right. Yes. Wow. I know there's a lot involved in that, and that's a lot to go through, and that takes a big toll on your security and your
Yeah,
confidence levels and trusting yourself, and all of those things get broken down. Right?
absolutely.
Yeah, they
And
do.
I think what gets damaged the most, as you rightly said, is the sense of self,
Yeah.
right? So a
Yeah.
lot of people who are in that devaluation discard phase, they start realizing something is not right. They start questioning this person's behavior. A lot of times women do that because
Yeah.
disproportionately women unfortunately are the victims. I'm not saying men don't go through this, they absolutely
Yeah.
do. But
Yeah.
like when I look at my own life, yes, there were those red flags. I
Right.
was aware that something is not going well, and a
Right.
lot of times at that stage victims actually start pulling out of the relationship. They
Yes.
start thinking about, should I think about breaking this up? It's not working for me. I'm
Right.
really feeling emotionally drained all the time. I'm not feeling fulfilled in this relationship. So they start contemplating it. It's not as if people don't realize it.
Right.
But what happens when they start contemplating, narcissists are very smart that way.
Yes.
They realize they are losing control,
Mm-hmm.
the control that they had on this victim.
Yes.
And what they start doing is they go back to the first phase of idealization.
Right.
They
Yep.
start love bombing again. They start gifting the person, appreciating the person, telling the person how much they love and how sorry they are about the behavior. They're going to try their best to improve.
Right. And then you go, oh, there's that person I met in the beginning. Oh, there
Absolutely.
they are.
Yeah,
Okay, they must be back because now I'm doing things right.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And then again, the cycle continues.
Very true.
Right. Now, sometimes some people, they do get out of the relationship. Sometimes, I've seen a number of people, in my work as well as personal life, who have realized that no, this is not going to work. I can't keep going like this in a circle and move out. But often in those relationships, narcissists actually come back into their lives again.
Right.
And
Right.
there is that phase of hovering
Right.
where they actually hover back into your life,
Yeah. Hoovering is definitely
right?
a very dangerous thing, and it's something that they use, right? Because they need to have a sense of validation and control.
Yeah.
And of course, they want to manipulate you. So they come back. And it's not because they love you or they want to change. It's because they want to keep manipulating you and controlling you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we get drawn back in. Well, the victim gets drawn back in, and then they're on the roller coaster again.
Yeah, they are. They are.
Yeah.
And this, I would say, often would happen when there are children in the relationship,
Yes.
right? Because as parents, you want the best for the child,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. you do.
And as a mom, as you said, we want the best for our children. So
Absolutely.
often at that phase, a lot of people take the individual back into their lives because they want to give them a chance. There is hope.
Right. Or they need it because they feel like it's almost their addiction, like a drug that they need to heal
Absolutely.
themselves, right?
Absolutely.
Of course, they're not going to feel good if they're away from that because they're used to having that high, right?
Yeah.
And so that makes a lot of sense too.
I think as simple as we make it sound, it's not so simple to go through this, as you
No.
rightly said, Shonna.
Oh my goodness, no.
And I want to be very, very, I want to emphasize this for our viewers that often we are not even aware as the survivor in that relationship that we are going through it.
Yes, of course.
Because you have to remember that A narcissist, if a person really has that kind of a personality, falls under the category of sociopaths,
Yes.
right? And you, as an individual, you are expecting everything that a normal individual would expect in a naturally healthy relationship with another individual.
Right.
But a sociopath, unfortunately, neither is normal in any way and
True.
neither can empathize.
True. Very, very true.
So I do want our viewers to really, really pay attention to that piece. That as simple as you and I are trying to make this cycle, it may sound very, very simple. And why? Why wouldn't I really see the signs? Why wouldn't I really react when he's doing this or she's doing it? It's not as simple to get out of it.
No, no. And it does happen over time as well. And it's not something
Absolutely.
that happens quickly.
Yeah.
And once you are attached to someone, it can be very difficult to detach.
Absolutely.
For the second half of this interview, I encourage you all to tune in to my next episode where we continue discussing this topic with Suchira Banerjee. Before I go, I want to say what I always say at the end of my show: always let the music live through you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Talk with Shonna. If you'd like to continue this conversation, you can always find me on Instagram at Shonna Brown Music 111 and my website, shonnamusic.com. It's definitely time that we start talking.